Hi, welcome to this morning's session, which is titled Unique Ways to Integrate Streaming into Corporate Communications and Training. My name is Andy Howard, and I'm founder and managing director of Howard & Associates, which is a consulting firm that helps companies implement video communications, so both video streaming as well as video conferencing. And as we'll see today, that often includes the merging of the two. With me today, I have Brian Patterson and Sunny Panesar from Vanguard, and they've put together a fantastic presentation on how they've built their internal and external streaming capabilities at Vanguard. A lot of great graphics, videos, pictures, so this will be, I think, one of the more entertaining sessions that you guys will see at the show. So with that, why don't we get started? Can you flip to that presentation?
You got to change the HDMI.
Oh.
Thanks. There you are.
Okay, so again, Howard & Associates is a consulting company that helps organizations implement video communications. From the streaming side of things, probably the two biggest projects I've worked on were for Aetna as well as Deloitte, and that was helping both those organizations re-architect their internal and external video streaming capabilities, integrating that in with their video conferencing systems and providing a scalable solution to move into the future. Both of those opportunities were switching from previously utilizing Windows Media infrastructure to moving towards H.264 and multicasting internally and delivering it out to the internet over a CDN. Go ahead. So this is kind of typically the architecture that we tend to recommend for our clients. As you can see, there's kind of different buckets of functionality here. And what we tend to recommend is that organizations choose best of breed for all those different pieces of functionality so that when something changes in the industry, there's a new codec, there's a new technology, whiz-bang technology that comes out, they can easily replace just part of the solution. And you'll see the architecture that they built at Vanguard is very similar to this in many ways. So you have video sources, which can be anything from a camera to multiple cameras to video conferencing systems to even production facilities in Vanguard's case. Going into a internal production facility where you can add graphics, mix the content, and then it goes into encoders to be delivered out on the network, typically multicast internally, and then out to the internet over a CDN. Next. So some of the things that we'll be talking about today are sort of, where's the trend moving from what's happened in the past to what's happening today. So typically in the past, what you'd see would be if you were going to do a webcast, you'd have a single camera on a single presenter. Now you can have multiple cameras, 3-camera shoots. You can have presenters in different locations, one person in Chicago, one person in New York, one person in London, that can all participate in the environment. You've got the ability to create really excellent production capabilities, so it's very much more like TV rather than the typical, like the second bullet there, the typical webcast where you've got somebody just sitting there talking and synchronized slides, which can tend to be quite boring. You can add a lot more production value to the content now. Typically in the past it was streaming from an event like this or a conference room, where now they have incredible production facilities on site that they can create very well done productions. And then really what the bottom line here is that historically most of the internal video has been for corporate communications, so it's the CEO broadcast, it's training, it's things like that. Whereas now you're starting to see video used a lot more for external communications with customers, with partners, with clients, for sales, for marketing, for customer service. So organizations such as Vanguard are really putting a lot of investment behind what they're doing and making it a very strategic piece of the company. So with that, I'll let you guys hit it, and please feel free to. We've got kind of a good-sized crowd here, so please feel free to ask questions along the way. I'll try to interject some questions as well, and this will be a great presentation. Oh,
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Andy.
Yep.
So my name is Sonny Panesar. I am the digital media manager for Vanguard, as well as manage all the technology in our studio. I've been with the company for almost 20 years. I spent about the first 12 years in IT, and then moved over to the video team to help them integrate into the network and basically solve some of their technology problems. And then this is Brian Patterson.
I'm Brian Patterson. I'm the technical director for Vanguard's Media Services. I am the technical director for all live webcasts, and I also edit and design projects using Avid Media Composer and Adobe Creative Cloud, and I'm also the technical project lead on some infrastructure projects, as in our fiber connectivity and our video conferencing connectivity to our studio and control room.
So the best way to tell you who Vanguard is having you watch a little video. So we're gonna kick it off.
should we have audio?
Check your, make sure
It's on. It's up to about 8.
Is it doing the HDMI audio?
You have to plug in this right here.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
Enough slack. You got it. Okay, good.
Let's do that again.
Always test your audio before you go live.
That's an HDMI cable, so it should work.
You should have taken the audio right out of the HDMI, but yeah.
There we go.
Now, did you change the audio to? There we go. All right.
When it comes to investing,
No, we don't have video.
There we go. All right, try 3. All right, let's do this. Hold on a second. Got to escape out of that. Yeah, let's just
Play it from here.
pull this down. All right, let's just listen to it. And then we'll
when
jump
it comes
back.
to
We'll have
investing,
figure that out.
ask yourself, why let anything stand in the way of your goals? Whether you invest on your own, through your employer, for an institution, or as a financial advisor, you want an investment company that focuses on one thing: doing what's best for its clients. At Vanguard, we're built to do just that. That's because Vanguard is the only company owned by its clients. We don't have outside owners to pay, so we have no conflicting loyalties, and we don't charge high fees or costly commissions that can diminish investors' returns. Because we're built differently from other investment companies, Vanguard funds can keep lowering costs to help investors earn more over time and reach their goals. But doing what's best for investors goes beyond lowering costs. It also means putting them first at all times and protecting their long-term interests. That's why millions of investors around the world trust the one company that's built to look out for them: Vanguard.
So that was a beautiful video. I just wanted to share that with you. So it was really well done. So we started operations in 1975. We have more than 20 million clients worldwide, and about 15,000 employees. So if you hear me say crew members, because it's all nautical ship themed, it's the same thing as employees. We have a little over $4 trillion in global assets under management. And we are I have to say this, otherwise I get in trouble, we are client owned, meaning that we're owned by the funds that we invest in, and that are owned by the clients that invest in those funds. So hopefully that made sense. So we're going to talk about our team. Before we get into the streaming part of it, there was a long learning curve that we had to go through. And part of this conversation that really has to start with, where do we begin at the front end of it? So our team today has about 18 people on the team. We have 5 producers, 5 editors. Brian's our technical director. A production team which can handle shooting, lighting, the grip work, and then we have 3 managers that oversee the team. So we offer basically a full multimedia production facility within Vanguard. So we're internal to the company. We are employees of the company. We're not outsourced or freelancers. And we handle all external and company-wide communication. So anything that goes on our sites, as well as to all of our employees, is managed by our team. There are smaller teams that do divisional communications within each of the different divisions that we have. There could be one person doing video, potentially 1 or 2 people writing for the website, for their intranet website. And then we really work on creating all the educational and promotional material for our content. So we are probably 95% web-based. Everything is delivered to our website and then to social media, which we'll talk about shortly. So we're running about 15 websites totally right now. So we have our US, we have about 5 sites in the US, and then the other 10 are all international sites. And we deliver video content to each one of those sites from either live or from recorded video that's streamed through our CDNs. We also deliver to all the social media channels. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they're listed here, and we create videos for those. We are getting into some of the live social media, which we'll talk about shortly. And then finally, we deliver to our intranet. Having 15,000 employees, it is the central, gigantic database. Actually, our intranet is larger from a page standpoint than all of our sites combined, because it has all the content and materials to do our jobs day to day. That's where we get all of our information from HR and everything else. So that has a lot of content that's being delivered to the intranet as well. So we handle all internal and external webcasts, which is where we're going to get to shortly. In studio and on-site production. It's a remote production, shoots around campus, or we actually travel to other locations. We also do voiceover podcasts. We have a full production facility, like I mentioned earlier, with editors. We do 3D modeling as well as part of what we put into our videos that we create. And approximately 400 videos a year is what we create, the team of 18. 200 approximately are new videos, and the other 200 are repurposed from older content that is still evergreen and we can still use. So all of this is really focused around our next thing, which is going to be, where do we get started? We have to start somewhere to where we're going to go here. So our next slide here, I want to talk about our business case a little bit. So prior to when I joined the video department in 2009, that was the first time we were asked to do a case study, which is basically go and identify how much it would cost to outsource our department. So we would go and hire a production facility and move everything outside and see what that ROI would be, how much that would cost, what the risks are with that, the travel costs and all that stuff. And it came back and it was, I don't know the exact number, but it was a lot higher than what it was to have the team in-house and where we were working. We were working from cubes and small little edit rooms. We had basically what I call a conference room studio, which was 10-foot ceiling or 8-foot ceiling, and you try to fit everybody in there to do a shoot, which maybe some folks are familiar with. So
The lights are like great.
yeah. So we would get 6 people in a room that was like 10 by 10 to do a shoot. So we did that actually twice. We did it in 2009 and then again in 2011, 2013. And it still came back as this really high number of how much it would cost to outsource our department to be able to do 400 videos by going outside. So I think we had proven the case that it was really valuable to keep our department and maybe even expand. So we proved ourselves out, and then we got the budget, right? And we got the support from all of our marketing teams. We do live under marketing communications at Vanguard. And they said, hey, we have a real value add here, and we really want to see that the demand of video is increasing so much that we really want to push for this. So we went off and started to discuss, hey, how do we create a world-class facility, and what could we do for our needs here? And just to understand, this is a world-class facility when I mean that for a corporation, right? So we're not a production or a broadcast company. So we are a corporate company that wants to create video for financial, for our financial audience. So we went through and talked about how could we increase efficiency. Our original, I don't want to call it a studio, but loosely defined studio was about a mile away because that was the only building space that we found that we could work out of from our edit suites and our audio suite, and where we basically sat in our cubes. So every time that we would go off and do a shoot, we were all tape based, so we'd load everything on the tapes. We'd have our 3 camera tapes and then the program master. Brian would actually drive it over at night. We would load it into the machine and ingest it to get it ready to edit the next morning. It was very slow and it took a lot of time, and there was all these risks with the tapes failing and things like that. So we really wanted to move away from that and also focus and base our entire platform around streaming, specifically live streaming. We really saw that early on, probably in 2013, 2014, that this is the way that we feel that people are going to absorb content. And at some point, I don't think, I'm a betting person, I'm not sure when Facebook Live was out, but we knew that we were headed that way. We knew that this is going to be sending live to your devices. And the only way we knew that was going to conferences and learning from other people and seeing what they're doing to figure that stuff out. So we needed to get out of our small studio space and move into something that was a larger corporate entity. So we really wanted to be able to deliver multi-channel across all of our enterprise as fast as possible, but keep the quality up. I would say 90% of our department was hired from the broadcast industry, so they came in from radio, TV, the movie industry, and have now fit into what we're delivering for the content. So the quality for us is very important, and we'll talk about that a little bit on what we're doing there.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Who is ultimately was the budget decision maker? Whose budget did it come out of? Was it executive communications? Was it marketing?
It was under marketing. So the way that our structure is, we have a head of it was actually on our planning and development team that all the marketing teams live under. So we had to go and convince all the, we call them principals, but think about like a VP basically, the VP of all the marketing organizations, which there's about 10 of. We had to go talk to them first because we're working actually for them, and then from there we went to their boss to get permission to do this, and they were all actually very supportive because, like I said, we have 3 monitors set up out of a 4x4 cube that we're editing video out of, and they want to come in and see this stuff, so they're hanging over top of us. We actually, the one big thing was our first live that we did, a live webcast streaming. The only SD Vivix line that we had coming into our buildings was we had one line coming into our primary building right outside of our CEO's office. So when we would show up to do a live webcast, the room was, I'm not kidding you, it's probably, I think, like a 15 by 12 room, and we would load up all this gear outside of his office. And we're talking about the CEO and our VPs. They wanted us out of that space. So that actually helped push, because every night we would show up there with like 10 carts and about 20 crew to try to make this live event happen. So they were like, we need you out of here. We don't want you, darting up the hallways. So that was not the linchpin, but that actually helped us because they're like, why are you guys, we're a large company. Why are we working out of this little room and trying to make this happen for our investors? Let's go invest in the industry and in the product that we need to build here. So.
And I think, going back to your business case analysis, I think a lot of organizations kind of do that same thing, probably not as diligently as you did, but when you're doing 1 or 2 or 3 events a year or once a quarter, it probably makes sense to outsource that because you can't, it doesn't make sense to have internal employees to run that. But when you're going to go to 400, then it certainly makes sense to insource that and to really develop some internal expertise. And obviously there's a tipping point somewhere in the middle there where it makes sense, which probably depends on each individual organization. But I see that a lot. Is as it becomes more strategic to the organization, they want to be able to bring it in-house.
So we're still not at the streaming part right now. We're still in the construction phase, but I think this is going to be really cool. You guys are going to like what we did here. So we went off and we started looking in the basements of buildings. Where could we find a facility now that we had the blessing of the senior leadership? We didn't have a budget yet. We just had the blessing. We had to go find the space. Vanguard has, I don't know how many in our Malvern campus, which is about 45 minutes outside of Philadelphia. I think 30 to 35 buildings or so. We have about 10,000 employees out of that location. That's our main headquarters. but it spaces at a premium. So we're actually in the basements of buildings, and we're like, well, if we're going to have clients come down here, we can't take them to the basement. I mean, we literally walk down and there's like old dirty towels that they used to clean hanging there. So that didn't make any sense. What we did find out was we actually had made a lot of good contacts with our real estate team and with IT. And we found out that there was a building that was coming up that we were actually going to be moving into that had an old data center, and IT didn't need it. We had other data centers, so they actually came and offered us that space. So we were nice enough to be able to get a space with raised floors, taller ceilings, no windows, which is huge for us, and nobody wanted to have their cubes in an environment that didn't have windows, but for a studio, it was perfect. So we were able to steal between 13,000 and 14,000 square feet of that space. And then we worked with a real estate team who located a design firm out of Philadelphia that actually built the ABC studios down in Philadelphia. We worked with them to do the construction and the design. I have an art degree from way back when, and it was fun because I got to sit there and draw on graph paper 35 different versions of how we want the studio laid out. So I worked with the designer to build that, and that was, Brian helped me, and that was really exciting because we get to, you don't get an opportunity to build something like that. It's like building your own house and putting every room where you think you want it, where you want it to be and not where somebody else does. So workflow was very important for us as well, and tying everything into one facility. So the hardest part of all of this was finding the integrator, right? Finding the right integrator that's going to be able to build this and really make it for what we need for this to go. We wanted to build it to scale in the future. So when we were told you got 13,000, 14,000 square feet, there's a wall here, and no matter what the growth looks like, you're not going to be able to go beyond that. So we really wanted to build this facility for today, tomorrow, and maybe for the next 10 years, that we wouldn't have to worry about any of the facility, us outgrowing it in that sense. So our other charging orders was, like I said, we had a lot of people from the broadcast industry that worked for us. We wanted to make sure that we weren't building a studio for CNBC or for a broadcast television. We're building a facility for a corporate environment. So our eyes were like this, because sometimes when you say, oh, you have budget, you just want to go and buy, $150,000 cameras and all of this stuff. And that's not really, we want to be fiscally responsible and make sure that we're providing the right, product for what we need. We don't want to overdo it and then have a tough time supporting it or outgrowing it. So our biggest thing that we did was, and I would really highly recommend this for every one of you, is learn from other people in this room, going to conferences. So we're lucky enough that we are right outside of Philadelphia, so we have friends at Comcast Corporate. We were able to go down and take a look at their studios, meet with their integrators. QVC Corporate is right down the street from us, so we definitely know that we're not looking for 50-foot ceilings and the massive infrastructure that QVC has, and then local production houses. So we learned from all those folks out there, probably spent a good 3 or 4 months before we would put pen to paper to figure out what we really want to target and build for our facility, and not necessarily for what other people were doing around us. So in our current space, which we'll get into shortly, we have 2 studios. One is more green screen, white screen, and we do some PR work out of there. And then we have another larger studio that we do most of our shoots from. We have currently 6 active edit suites, but we can expand up to 10 if we needed to. We have some conference rooms that are already wired and ready to go. We just have to put some furniture and equipment in there and an editor, and we can expand in that space. We have our engineering room, our control room, audio suite, and a bunch of green rooms to support the productions that we do in there. Probably about 15 rooms overall that we built out in this little space here. So this is our mock-up of a 360 view of our studio. So we reached out to 10 different vendors in the area to help us build a studio that would work for us. So this one vendor came back. Actually, it's the vendor that actually builds the studios for QVC. So we were lucky in that sense that they were very familiar on building large sets that could be movable and transportable. A lot of it is fixed, but there are components of it that we can adjust and shoot in any direction, basically. So moving some furniture out of the way, we could pull the cameras back and get a little bit of depth of field. It is not a huge facility, but it's perfect for what we need today.
It's 60 feet by 40 feet.
Thank you.
That's the space.
So we have some moving walls in here. Everything is dynamic. So we have some artwork on the walls with monitors behind them that show up. Here's a couple shots. I'm just going to walk through this and let me know if you have any questions of what we are.
Was the integrator, is it a local company or did it?
It is a local
Okay.
company. Yep. They actually were people that worked for QVC at one
Right,
point,
so
building
they
their sets,
broke
and then they
out,
broke
so-
out and built their own company. And we just had an RFP with them, so we found them, and they kind of won the bid. So.
But it's nice to have somebody local too, because
Yes.
they can make
Yep.
changes pretty
And
quickly.
we've done actually 3 iterations of changes already with them,
Yeah.
so to the set. So this is a live webcast. It's very branded, our set, so we can change the colors to what we need. Basically with the lighting structure that we have, all LED lights in the ceiling that are programmable. So this is a typical set for us that we do for a live webcast. You are actually bleeding into multiple sets, but we actually don't mind that so much right now. And you can focus in on the one shot to really get a good view of it. Here's another one, which turn the cameras around, and that background and the lights can all change. We have, like I said, DMX control, so we can dial in any color that we're looking for in that background, and we've probably done about 10 different. Even though red is our primary color, each division has their colors as well. So our institutional division has a little different color for brand. Our financial advisors has a little bit different color, international. So we can actually dial those colors into the background to kind of get it to match the website that it's sitting on, plus basically the content throughout, end to end. And this is a little wider shot of our studio. So we're running 3 Panasonic cameras in here. They are still our older cameras. We've had them for like 8 or 9 years, but we stopped using the tape and basically wired it, which Brian will get into our router and into our recording devices. DMX lighting controls, all LED lights, and then we do have wall monitors outside, fully 24/7 air conditioned control, and I think that's.
And the raised floor helped to get the ceiling height that we needed. So there's a ramp that goes into it as well. So right here is a shot of our control room. As Sonny was saying, it's an introductory broadcast studio that fit our needs, our corporate environment needs. One of our producers, Scott, who's in the first row here, says he has a great line that says it's a TV studio that plugs into the internet, because that's our distribution channel. It's streaming into the internet, but we're using lighter broadcast equipment that's reliable. It's on 24/7 to give you that reliability you need. So this basically here is, like I said, our control room, and this is the typical amount of people we would have in our shoot for a live webcast. It depends on the type of shoot, but our live webcast personnel would consist of a producer who is on the top corner. That's actually Scott. Myself, the TD, our audio operator. We have social media integration, so we have somebody that runs that, teleprompter, a writer, and for our live stuff that's very crucial and you never know what's going to happen, we have an engineer that comes in for those events. Here is another shot and that's me behind our switcher on the other side. Here's another shot of the crew in the control room. And just a high level, I'll give you guys the gear that we're using. We're using a Sony MVS1 ME switcher. We're doing 1280 by 720 at 5994. And we're doing, we have a Personas 32 channel mixer, a Chiron Mosaic, Sony professional monitors on the walls and on the console, and we have a Clearcom matrix system and a QTV teleprompting. And then the interesting thing, I didn't mean to cut you off. The interesting thing though is in our old smaller conference room studio, we did have a small control room, but we had a rack of equipment in that control room. So the one thing we noticed with our tours is use the room next door, have dedicated air conditioning in there, and that really became our engineering room.
I was just going to say, I assume there's redundancy built in throughout this.
Yep, we're on the building generator, which is nice, and we have APCs in every rack in the control room and also the engineering room. So computers take a while to boot back up, so it's nice to have the redundancy that we don't need to mess with that. The only things that would go off during a webcast are our lights and our cameras, but those things can come right straight back on. Even the DMX boards on a APC.
But the video would stay up. You just have a temporary lighting.
Correct.
We
Yeah.
actually-
We have a
actually
slide.
We'll have a slide to
Oh,
talk
okay.
about that.
I forgot about that one.
But no problem. But this is our engineering room. We use a Harris Imagine 80 by 80 router, which is funny. When the integrator was talking about that, we said, oh, we'll never come even close to that, and we're basically close to running out of space on it. Key Pro racks, which record in Avid DNX HD. We're an Avid house, so that's a nice functionality there. We don't have to record in a different format to then transcode into the Avid. It basically is instantaneous. And that was when we went from tape to digital, that was a really big conversation we had to have to figure out what's our flavor we want to record in, and then what's the redundancy of that. For streaming, we use Digital Rapids touch streams to our intranet. We also have 2 Cisco video conferencing units that I'll get into later. And then outbound, we use Vivix level 3 fiber, and I can get into that a little bit later.
Okay, so now we're actually getting into the actual presentation, which is to talk about our streaming that we're actually doing.
Why don't we
right
take
now.
a quick pause
Yeah.
there and just see if there's any questions from the audience on the whole production side of things? Dan?
Just when you start talking about that kind of setup, is that kind of it? Your webcasting universe consists of getting guys in studios, the whole control room setup, or is there some approach to this where sometimes, some a little lower scale?
Can you just repeat the question?
Yeah, so I think your question is this basically the full end process, or is there a smaller, lower scale scenario of streaming the webcast? Yes, and we are going to get into that a little bit. So we will start off with our full large scale and kind of work through that. We did start off at a smaller scale probably a couple years ago when we were just using, we'd actually toyed around with the idea, and we'll talk about this, with Logitech cameras, smaller end cameras plugged into laptops with Wirecast software. Our biggest demand was outside of having, and we're so redundant, like to the point, like even our edit rooms and just what we're doing, we could sit here and talk about hours about redundancy. It's so important to me personally, and contingency, and to our company, that we also fought for the value of doing larger scale broadcast type work versus, because the quality wasn't there. So when we get into some of the things, we're going to talk about like Google Hangouts, we're going to talk about live for Facebook that's coming around the corner for us, and we are not comfortable at this point with the smaller scale because the audience size, which we'll show you, doesn't equate. So when we get into that shortly, we're going to see, we're broadcasting to 15 to 30,000 high net worth clients for an hour. And so that's really important for us, that we have the quality for them, and also there's no failure in any of our stuff. So when we were experimenting with the smaller end scenarios, we did notice a lot of issues that we were having. So thus moving away from like more of a Windows operating system or a Mac to more production facility type, because of the failure rate was higher, and that was really concerning for us, where we had lost, clients, you lose the client and they're not going to come back. And we will talk about that those streaming webcasts have a direct effect on ROI for us. So at the end of those, we actually get emails saying, hey, call me tomorrow, have my rep call me, I want to transfer more money into my account from whatever. So we've definitely seen that. And we did start there, but there was a really good reason for us to move into the larger end facilities. So these are the 8, if you go back, Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
So we're quickly going to run through these 8 different scenarios. I'm going to spend a little more time on some of the larger ones. But these are the scenarios that we're going to talk about today, that we've identified that are our streaming platform and what we do for streaming internal to our employees as well as external to our clients, and what's on the horizon for us. So we're going to talk about the why and the what and how we're doing this. So hopefully we can try to answer any questions that you may have by going through this process. So the first one here, we're not going to play the video because I know we're having issues. So this is another shot of a live stream webcast that we do. So we're doing about 25 to 30 of these a year, and we're going to be ramping up on that for the next couple of years because the ROI has been coming back and we're seeing that. We're also going to talk about basically how we do this, right? So it's not just about this, it's a very simple process of inviting people and they just show up. There's a lot of marketing that happens on the front end and the back end of each one of these webcasts. So Brian will talk a little bit about the tech.
Sure. We have 3 cameras in studio. We are outbounding to level 3 Vivix, and we just like as Sonny mentioned, the clients we're going to and the high numbers we're going to. We really like the reliability the fiber offers. It also allows us to stay off of the network, which is once you start putting appliances on the network, it just you can cause some sort of problems. We also send a contingency of using our video conferencing unit and an audio backup line. We email a slide like 24 hours ahead of time before the webcast to our vendor. So we're redundant 3 times. And we also ISO record on all the cameras to help in the editing in case we have to edit around things. And then there's a program master record, a line cut that I provide to the editor as well to kind of get them started. So they're not really like reinventing the wheel.
So the Vivix line is a direct connection to the level 3 CDN, which then serves it up to the internet users?
No. So actually, the level 3 goes directly from us. It goes from us to level 3.
Yep.
From level 3 to our webcast vendor, which is on 24 in San Francisco. And then from on 24, it's then they basically take it and serve it up in all the different flavors, MP4, Flash, mobile devices, and so forth. So.
Right.
But we,
I think On 24 has a direct connection to level 3 too, so
Yes.
it's not like it's
Yes.
not traveling over the public internet
Exactly.
until it goes out to the end user.
Yeah, and we've experimented with, we even have as our backup, we're using a Cisco video conference unit as our backup, and we experimented that. We've also seen, obviously, latency is huge, so we have also seen, because it's a live and we're actually taking live questions, we saw that delay was actually causing an issue with our return feeds, with also, the response time that we were getting. So having that Vivix, it is more expensive, obviously, but having that that instantaneous feed is really important to us, and the quality of delivering HD was very important as well.
Yep.
So the next slide, these are just some stats. So these are just 4 webcasts I just pulled out from our retail site this year, the first 4 that we did. And so you can see our registrations are running anywhere between 24 to 35,000. People are actually registering, and then anywhere between 9,000 to 12, 13,000 are actually who are coming and showing up, which is giving us an average of about 36% on the attendance rate, so which is really good for us. They are staying, these things usually last about an hour. They are staying anywhere between 45 minutes to like an hour for the webcast, so people are not dropping off. It is generally our subject matter experts that are up on camera, CEO, the head of our finance team. And so we're seeing a lot of, the interaction is huge. We're getting really good numbers. What's crazy is the pre-event questions. We can never get to all of them, but during the registration process, we ask for their first name, last name, and email address, and then an open box for any questions that they might have of the moderator and the SMEs. And we're getting 4,000, 6,000 questions coming in. And then on top of that, during the actual live broadcast, that hour, we're getting another 5,000 to 6,000 questions coming in. So there's a lot of questions that are coming in about finance, about the markets, and what people are asking for, what they should be doing. So we also have a section on there, which is a resource widget, which has white papers, bios, links, PDFs, and we're getting tons and tons of click-throughs and downloads of all of our content there as well. And then when you add up the replay numbers, so within about 2 weeks, we have the full replay back up of that 50-minute broadcast up on our site. And then we take highlights from that video and make 3 or 4 what we call excerpts. They're about 2 to 3 minute videos, and we load them up as well. Those are our number one, I guess, sounds good. Our number one viewership out on YouTube also are those quick little excerpts that we selected. So we get 60, 70, 80,000 hits on YouTube of that content as well.
How long are those usually?
3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we basically take the highlights of the full replay and break up into 3 or 4 videos and then load those out there as well. So
And how come a C and D don't have any on-demand?
I think when I
replay?
pulled these numbers, they weren't available yet.
Oh, okay.
So,
It wasn't that there's not certain content that you
no.
can put on everything.
I'm sure
goes
today if
on
I go
event.
into the tool
Okay.
that's available, this is a couple weeks old. So, and then so the next slide is actually 2016. This is just a cumulative of last year. So just for the retail division, again, we did 16,000 streaming webcasts. 16 live webcasts. We had about 160,000 attendees overall, 36% attendance rate, 62,000 pre-event questions, 22,000 live questions during those 16, and then about another 60,000 in replays. So we get the ROI is there. So what I had mentioned earlier, in a lot of those questions, we're getting people that are saying, hey, give me a call. I really like what you guys are saying. And we actually have, because we're FINRA regulated financial company, specific questions. We actually have to go through all these questions, our division, our retail division, and answer those questions if they are talking about certain things, right? So if they're saying, hey, my webcast wasn't working, that we don't have to answer. We'll point them to the right direction and troubleshoot. But if they're saying, hey, I have a question about my funds, we have to actually respond to that. And a lot of those times that is turned into an ROI for us because they'll say, hey, I want to transfer more into this fund or more, purchase more into this fund. So this is Google Hangouts. So we got into these a couple years ago, and our marketing team said, hey, we have a lot of people that are signing up for the Vanguard Google Hangout page. Could we experiment and start looking into that? So this is where we had started originally with a Logitech camera or a laptop plugged in, and just basically going directly to Google Hangouts. The quality wasn't great, even with a little light. Then we graduated into a small Sony camera with fire wiring into a laptop. That wasn't great, and especially for what we're trying to do is have 2 or 3 people on camera at the same time. And so that didn't really work for us either. So at one point, we're like, hey, we saw, I think it was 2014 or 2015. President Obama did some Google Hangouts from the White House, and the quality was comparable to, it was HD quality, looked great. So we're like, hey, how do they do that? So we just, I hate to say it, but we literally picked up the phone and called Google and asked them, and they were able to share their list of, here's a simple way of doing it at home, here's level 2, level 3, and then here's how we did the Obama broadcast. And so we went off and we built the boxes and the hardware and the software to go do that and plugged it into our control room, and we're able to deliver full HD, a beautiful experience. And now instead of just delivering it to On24, we were delivering it also to the Google Hangout page and also to YouTube Live, to our YouTube channel, and that was a live 720p broadcast as well. And we were actually now getting more people to come in and watch because now we're not having them register if they just want to find out. So we're cross-channel promoting that as well. So eventually that turned into, okay, we're going to do a live webcast with On24. Let's also serve that at the same time, the exact same broadcast, instead of doing anything different, serve it at the same time to a Google Hangout page and then also to YouTube. So we were able to now deliver that one content to 3 different channels. And in the future, what we're talking about is we're actually working right now to go build out a similar box for Facebook Live using Wirecast software, that now we're going to have a 4th delivery mechanism to try to potentially deliver segments or at least maybe even the full broadcast to Facebook Live, because we have a lot of folks that have signed up for our Facebook page as well.
A lot of people are also taking those Logitech webcams, which are fantastic webcams, and trying to put them into video conferencing rooms, and it's the same thing. That product was designed to sit 2 to 3 feet from your face. That's what it was designed for. It's not really meant to catch a whole room. So they're really not ideal for that type of environment, and people are starting to realize that, and obviously like you guys did, and
Yeah, I would
coming up
definitely
with other
say,
solutions.
not everyone is where we are, and maybe that's never their goal to get there, but we started, where a lot of folks are. I actually met a gentleman yesterday who said, hey, we're a small financial company of 6 people, 4 blocks from here, and we're just starting to do our first video. And he came to the Content Delivery Summit to figure out how to deliver video. And I said, that's where we were 15 years ago. 94 is where we started that. So, you know, this is not all we've all had to start kind of before we run. And so, you know, I don't want to overwhelm anybody. This has been a long journey, but you can get there if this is where you need to go. And not everybody is looking to go here. So don't take that away as like, hey, this is not going to be valuable. We learned all those steps and made a lot of mistakes getting here. So, and even today we're still learning. There's a lot more out there that we can do. So, yes.
Do you have any sort of integration back from On24 into internal CRM to track the reporting and analytics?
We don't currently, but we are working on that right now. So their system, their database is very robust. So we're trying to figure out how to use some APIs to connect that to our new we are actually upgrading our CMR system to a newer one, which should be able to integrate into that as well. So not today, but we're working on that.
They just go back to the reporting links, I guess the business development director.
They just go back to that, yep, and they can pull all the stats in there from there. So.
Yeah, you could typically download it as a CSV or whatever you want.
Yeah. And actually, their product itself has a lot of great integration and charts and stuff like that you can pull a lot of reports. You can pull it down into CSV if you want to get, you know, advanced reporting, but right out of the box, there's some great stuff with just, you know, just averages and stuff. So. Do you want to?
Yep. Yeah. So another thing we did was we worked with IT to get our whole company is on the Cisco backbone. So we were able to get 2 Cisco codecs installed into our control and engineering room. So now we can take a expert from any video conference room in any Vanguard building around the globe. So we can pull in, and so we can do that. We actually were able to bring our European chief economist in from London, who's on the screen with into this program, and you know, then you don't have to worry about travel and all that kind of stuff. You could just bring them right in. We're able to send out, you know, everything but his audio, so it's really professional way of doing it. So we're able to bring in or send out via any video conferencing unit to any non-Vanguard facility as well. So we were able to do things to like Morningstar conferences and other events that normally you wouldn't be able to do without having this interconnectivity into our system.
Yeah, and that's just a standard, you know, video conferencing equipment. We could tie into, because we put 2 units in our control room and tied them into our studio, we could literally tie those into anywhere. As we just did one overseas to Israel. We've done, like Brian said, Morningstar. We had an opportunity where somebody couldn't travel to us, but they were at a hotel, and they didn't have Cisco. They had a different unit, and we were able to tie into their unit and bring them in live. So it's, again, just something that, you know, Brian talks about the 8080 router that we had. That's why we're maxing it out, because people say, hey, could we do this? And then it's up to us to go figure it out. And usually we can, but we're also, you know, we're weighing heavy on the resources that we have today.
Do you do a digital transcode of the video conference, or do you actually back up a codec and take a line out into your production?
It's a line right out.
It's a line right
Yeah,
out.
that's that works phenomenally well. It
It
seems
does.
like, you know, you wouldn't need to do that in
Do a
today's
little
day and
converter,
age,
yeah,
but
do a little converter, and yeah, you're good to go.
that's what a lot of people do, and it just works.
As long as we got enough bandwidth, we're good.
Yeah.
So this is another kind of thing where we're just starting out, but you know, really telecom and IT support with anybody, I would say, any corporation, is become their best friends. So you can partner with them. You know, there was some fiber that was available, and we were able to grab up some. So we have 6 buildings currently connected, and we can use the device that you see on the screen here to basically take our cameras, set up anywhere in these 6 buildings that we have connectivity. One of them is actually outside, so we can use our entire like kind of centralized courtyard as well if an event happens there. And it allows us to provide location shoots all around our campus.
So all the equipment plugs into this, and then this plugs into the fiber network, and then it just basically backhauls it
Yep.
back to the studio?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it uses 4 strands of fiber.
Okay.
yeah, there's 2 of these units. There's a unit that's out in the field, which is this one, and there's a similar unit that's plugged into the control room, and basically the fiber is sending the audio, the video,
Right.
and all the returns back to the studio, and then we can record. We can actually, from there, we can actually cut the show and then send it out to, on
Yeah.
25th
Yeah.
if we wanted to,
Right.
and anywhere around the world. So.
And that was when we were like looking at places like QVC, we never imagined this kind of stuff, but making our kind of a centralized master control was like kind of a goal that we had, but you sort of have to start somewhere to get there, and I feel like we're starting to really get there to have, instead of pulling encoders out, plugging them into network ports, it's getting everything to where we know it'll work and having that redundancy and contingency.
So on this next one, I think we're almost wrapping up here. So this is actually, it's a mid-year celebration that we do in June, and it's all hands meeting. So this was the first year that we were actually able, last year was the first year we were actually able to do it out of that courtyard that Brian mentioned, using that multi-dyne piece of equipment that we showed. We had 3 cameras plugged in on a stage. There was about 1,000 people around this tent that came in for our CEO to do this announcement. And then usually that would be done out of our studio with no live audience in the past, or we'd have to hire a third-party company to come in with all of their satellite equipment to do that. And so now we basically did the ROI in a year, so that piece of equipment is what we paid for one time, which we should be able to use that for the next 7 or 8 years, was what we paid that one company every year to do. So now we were able to get rid of that resource, do it ourselves by having this fiber network, by making a one-time purchase of this equipment and tying it into our control room. So outside of this, it's multicast. We have 7,000 employees back at their desks, or what we call watch parties. They're in a conference room, and they're watching this announcement live. It's a big celebration for all the work that we've done for our clients, and it happens every year. And so this is basically using, like Brian said, that same equipment, but now we can actually do it in an audience, and it's a lot more energy, and we only do it once a year, so it's a big deal for us. So Brian will talk about our next. Oh, sorry, before I jump forward, so that same piece of equipment, the largest conference room that we have holds about 500 people. Obviously, in our main campus, we have 10,000, so we can't get everybody in there. Otherwise, our CEO would be doing 50 of these sessions. So this was an event that we did that was jam-packed. We got more than 500 people that signed up for it. So we were able to have the 500 come here, and then by using that equipment with a 2-camera shoot, we actually broadcast it to the people's desks or video conference rooms so they could watch it as well. So great. I mean, I think we had maybe like 1,500 people that signed up, around 1,200, 1,500 people. So the other 700 couldn't get into the room, but they could still watch the event. And it was, I think, a couple hours long.
Yeah, and the cool thing too is there's video reinforcement in there, so we can send a feedback. So it being fiber, basically, there's no delay, there's no any latency that you would have. So that's nice too, to be able to send back the finished production with lower thirds and everything back to the room as well. That's the last thing. Yeah. So now we're getting into the space of they want to do the campus event in another state. We have buildings in other states, so it doesn't have any fiber connectivity, and it's in a parking lot outside the building. So we're working with a company that's going to get us a satellite truck, a production truck. So it's basically like we have to take all of what we have in our facility and do it mobile for one shoot. So that's where we've been coming and working with them to figure out what's the best option to do with that, and that's what we've been working on, and that's coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah, and normally we wouldn't do that, but it's an anniversary, it's a 20-year anniversary of our North Carolina startup that we did there. So it's a big event, so that's why we would do this. Normally it would just be done out of our main campus, and so there are obviously additional costs to go in with that.
Yeah, I was going to say the Vivix stuff is great, but
yeah,
it's not.
But no.
It's not free.
Yeah, but like I said, it's once every 10 years or so. So it's
right.
not, and he really likes to. Our CEO really likes to get in front of the folks because he doesn't get that opportunity a lot.
Yeah,
and it's tough to get network connectivity out.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So this is we looked at 5 different options, and this was again the most redundant and the most secure for what we needed to do. So basically, wrapping up. One of the other things that we do, this is that other 5% that's not streaming in that sense of it, but out of our studio also, we have brought in multiple Vivix lines, inbound and outbound. Originally, we had this, again, tiny little space over in our main building that PR controlled, and we used a third-party vendor. So whenever we got a call from Bloomberg, CNBC, hey, there's a market fluctuation or something's happening in the international markets, we want the CEO or we want this person to come on live TV, we want to be able to do that. So we actually moved about a year and a half ago, we moved that entire production and merged it into our facility. So Brian had to work on figuring out how to tie the Vivix lines into, basically it's a monitor in a room with a camera and a return feed. And what we're doing is we're tying into sending footage live. It's a live conversation with Bloomberg, CNBC, Wall Street Journal, Fox Business, so all of these companies. And this is not streaming per se, but it is actually using, now we're sending stuff to TV. So that is another thing that we had to think about. It was kind of like the grenade that came over and said, after we built this facility, now figure out how to integrate this in there as well. The great thing was Morningstar doesn't use that. They still use video conference equipment. So we had our founder did an hour-long Q&A with Morningstar to remote facilities. I think one in Chicago and one over in Amsterdam. And he didn't have to fly. He's 88 years old now, I think, and he didn't have to fly out. So so we were able to do that because of having this set up in here as well. So it's really it's that virtual environment that we're living in today, and it's the face-to-face is great, but this is the next best thing for us.
Yeah, and it keeps it all under one roof, which is nice too. As Sonny said earlier.
Yep.
Yeah, just as you add more applications, it just makes that ROI go up and up.
It does, yeah. Yep.
And especially when it's executive stuff.
Yes. So that is our presentation.
All right, we've got a couple of minutes here, so let's take some questions.
Places where you guys don't have fiber, have you ever experimented with UDP-based backhaul like Spera, Zixi, SRC?
We haven't. That is something that actually
The question was,
thank you.
if there's not Vivix, have you worked on UDP delivery such as
Aspera.
Aspera,
SRC,
SRC, or Zixi?
We haven't at this point. That is something that we are starting to talk about now. But the one thing that when Brian was talking about that fiber feed, there was 144 strands of fiber that were run when we connected our two campuses together, and I think they used like 10. So we were using 4 strands per every building. We have enough fiber there. We just haven't gotten to all of them yet. I mean, we only started this about like 6 months ago, dropping these fiber lines. So if we can't meet that demand, then that is something that we're considering as a back end. So.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's not clear to me. What is the return of the investment and all of this process? I mean, do you charge us a subscription per user, or is it included within Vanguard services to the end clients? It's just not clear to me. I mean, I do have a pretty much straightforward relationship with this process because I do this back in Mexico. It's pretty much the same story.
Yep.
But it is my own company. So how did you search your return of investment in serving to internal clients?
Do you want to repeat that question?
Yeah, so I guess the question is, can you provide more detail on the return on investment, both for internal as well as external?
Yeah,
I guess.
I just want to know how did you get the income to provide to this area to keep on growing?
Okay. I would say for the external stuff, it's definitely there because we're seeing clients coming in and saying, hey, I want to invest more because of the message that we're sending out. So we are a virtual company in the sense of we don't have home offices, we don't have people in every state. So when you're dealing with us, you are dealing with us online mostly or via phone and email. So this is the best channel for us to get our message out, to get why it's important to invest with us. We are the lowest from a cost standpoint for what you're going to get on your return. We are, we're basically at cost company, and because we're client owned, that's where we're selling this. And we don't have a large advertising or marketing budget at all. It's because of the name that it's been there for for 45 years that we've built, and that's why people are coming because of that name and because of what we stand for, which is the client. At the end of the day, for our internal. And we are getting the ROI because when investors are coming in and they like what they're seeing and like what we're speaking for, they're investing more money of their dollars. For our internal ROI, there probably isn't as much of an internal ROI, but we don't do as much of the live streaming as we do. External is 80% of it. The internal, we're doing a lot less for it, but it is also because we're in 35 buildings, we're in 16 different countries, and there's one CEO, we can't get to all of those people quickly. So this is another mechanism for us. Video and also live streaming is the fastest way to get to all of those, to get all 15,000 employees around the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think the numbers just prove themselves out. I mean, how often could you say you got 17,000 people to listen to your message for an hour,
Yeah.
and a third of them write in a question and a third of them download the content? I mean, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and we're definitely available if you guys. I'd love to share my business card. So if you have more questions for us, please. I'd love to learn about what other people are doing too.
I just have one final question. So when you do create the video on demand asset and you have to publish, you said that I think you had 10 different websites and you've got your intranet. Is there one content management system that's driving all of that, or is there different systems that you have to publish to different places?
No, so we do have one content management system. Currently, we're using Limelight, who's here as
Okay.
well. So we're using their CDN, but it's the older system. So we're just uploading to the content to their CDN, and then using those URLs embedded into our content management system internally that manages all 15 sites. But we are looking at moving into their Orchestrate platform, which will then give us, the full marketing.
So
power
even
as
the
well.
internal content is hosted out on their CDN?
It is, and then secured, and then brought
brought
back
back
in
in.
through IP security. Yeah, we
Okay.
have different IP protocols.
Great. All right, well, I think we're a couple minutes over here, so thanks everybody for coming. Enjoy the rest of the show. There is a networking reception tonight at, I think, from 5 to 6, and the exhibits are open all day, so please attend and enjoy yourselves and enjoy the opportunity to learn from your colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you.